It is high school football Wednesday here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. It's the Desmond Johnson Show live here during your lunch break. Pull out your phone, turn it on real quick, prop up your phone to the side, eat your lunch out your lunchbox. Desmond Johnson, Marc Pruitt from the Winston-Salem Journal. We'll get into the games from a busy week one across the Triad. Had some narratives that we got some answers for and some others that set up some bigger storylines going into week two. We've got Marc's Big Three, the three biggest games to look at here in the Triad this upcoming Friday, and we'll preview the WCOG and WTOB high school football games of the week. It is the Desmond Johnson Show.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you want and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's fourth and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
So we had week one, Friday night, across the Triad. Everybody kicked off the high school football schedule. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we learned from this previous week, and then we'll get into this upcoming Friday. Doesn't get any easier as the non-conference slate goes into week two across the entire state, and one of the biggest games in the state we'll actually have. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of Marc's top three going into this upcoming thing. But Marc, how was your Friday evening? Where'd you end up parking and deciding to watch a game?
I was at Grimsley for Grimsley and Mount Tabor. Great game, a lot closer, I think, than the final score indicated. It reminded me a lot of last year's game between the two teams. It was kind of a dogfight for the first 2.5 to 3 quarters. I think it was tied at halftime last year. Mm-hmm. It just kind of wore them down in the fourth quarter and pulled away and won. I think 30-7 was the final. But Mount Tabor struck first in the game last year, and then Friday night, Mount Tabor struck first again and had an early lead. Kind of a similar circumstance. Last year, Snook Peterkin caught a long touchdown pass. Friday night, he caught a long pass. I think it was about a 60-yard pass to set up their first touchdown. So there's a lot of similarities. It was 20-12 going into halftime, and it could have been even closer. Snook caught a pass from Lane Albright. That was, I say it was about a 50-yard Hail Mary right there at the end of the half. He caught it, but he was about a foot out of bounds when he landed. Or it's a different ball game, I think, going into the second half. But it was kind of a similar circumstance. Some injuries piled up for Mount Tabor. Jadon Blair missed some time. Matthias Banks missed some time there in the second quarter. And then a lot of, as Coach Brown was telling me afterwards, he was just having to move a lot of pieces in to play positions that they haven't really practiced that so far. And a lot of younger guys too. So it kind of wore them out in the second half. And Grimsley, Mitchell Summers was just running wild all night.
I don't understand why this kid doesn't have a whole lot of D1 offers. He's probably one of the best running backs in the entire state. Like,
talked to him about that. I talked to Coach Brown about that after the game, and he said he's got a lot of D2 stuff. And he says just how it is now with the portal.
The portal's really affected a lot of that. And I know he's a little undersized. I think he's like 5'7", 5'8". He's a short kid. I've met him a lot of times, but
2 inches taller. I mean, he'd be everybody's number one pick.
I will put it out into existence right now. North Carolina A&T head coach Vincent Brown, if you are listening to this, we are, of course, the home of the Aggie Sports Network here. Go check out Mitchell Summers at Grimsley. Like, don't let that kid leave Greensboro. If nobody else wants to get him, then let him go to A&T and just, show out there. But, yeah, Mitchell had like 5 touchdowns, I think.
He was the only one that got in the end zone for Grimsley.
Just insane. So they'll be able to lean. So, of course, Grimsley's going to be able to lean on that ground game. And, of course, they've got Faison Brandon, the number 1 rated recruit in the class of 2026. Before we go off of that, I guess I should get your comments on what happened this week regarding Faison and him and his mother suing the North Carolina High School Athletic Association over NIL rights. My understanding is that based on the news release, there was a large national card company that approached the Brandon family to do a trading card set or something with Faison that would have been worth like millions of dollars. It would have been paid out over time, basically generational changing money for his family. And when they submitted it to the state waited 3 days after they made the NIL ruling to respond back to his ruling. Mm-hmm. And in the state, typically, if they change anything, it doesn't happen immediately. They'll make the rule and then it changes the next year. So even if they changed it tomorrow, it wouldn't affect Faison because he'll be a senior next year and would only get like the last couple months of the year to even be able to benefit as being the number 1 rated recruit who just got raised to a 5-star recruit last week or whatever by 24/7. What are your thoughts on this? How do you think it's going to play out in terms of does the state buckle? Do they decide to go ahead and let this allow for public schools, or do they stand fast and go with what they originally ruled?
I don't think this will be the last time this will happen this year with all the talent that's out there. And I think it's already kind of driven at least one big name around here, Kendra Harrison out of Reidsville.
Yeah. Actually, let me clarify real quick, Mark, before you do that. He's not suing the North Carolina High School Athletic Association.
No,
he's suing the State Board of Education. I'm sorry about that.
NCHSAA now. It's run by government, which is kind of insane to me because you can't even pass a budget. But having to deal with
it took us 6 years to get 8 classifications because they.
I don't think this was the last time we'll see this with people as renowned as Faison has become. And like I was saying, it drove Kendra Harrison from Reidsville to Providence Day so he could accept NIL money this season immediately. But I don't see how they can stop this. If they don't allow it to happen, all these kids are going to end up going to play private school football and maybe out of state.
I was going to say probably out of state, right? Like from the coaches I've talked to this week, as we've been doing our rounds, doing the coaches shows, it feels like there's a deeper fear of kids just leaving the state entirely. There'll be a talent drain of like kids just leaving to go play at private schools if the state doesn't do something. And I understand why I didn't see this going forward, like when they were making the decision that this could happen. And to a point, I can't remember who made the point to me. It might have been Coach Brown on Monday night, but he was like, honestly, if you sit back and think about it, there's only 3 or 4 Faison Brandons or Dre Harrison every year in the entire state of North Carolina. So there's only a couple of kids that are going to really get that huge deal. You're talking about the kid that some local car dealer that wants to do a radio ad and it's $200 and that kind of thing.
But that's a lot of money for a lot of these kids.
It is. And
a couple $100 here and there. I think, that's
not cool.
That's a lot of money. We're not talking probably what Faison would have gotten or Kendra Harrison was going to get.
I think Dre's rated top 5 nationally in that same class, like overall. So there's a lot of. It's weird as that class is going to be the one that kind of determines this going forward because you've got these top 5 nationally ranked players that are in it going to top ranked schools.
They're setting the market for all that right now, I think. Yeah,
exactly. So they'll be the flag bearers for this. So shout out to Grimsley. We'll get to their Friday game. They got probably the biggest game in the state on Friday. And of course, we got it here at Tobacco Road Friday at 7:00 kickoff. We'll get to that in just a bit. Shout out to, I want to say all the teams that we ran. Let me recheck. Did Southwest Guilford win?
No, they
lost to Oak Grove. So everybody but Southwest Guilford won their opening night games on Tobacco Road. East Forsyth handled Heritage 44-0, I believe it was.
Sounds right.
46 or something like that. Kept them blank. Glenn, shout out to head coach Tommy Green. New head coach Tommy Green got his first win of the season over Ledford over at the Water Tower. And of course, Grimsley defeating Mount Tabor. So Glenn is on the road this week. We don't have them. Southwest Guilford's also on the road. We don't have them. We do have the debut of Cowboys Live, which is the Southwest Guilford Coaches Show live from Kickback Jackson High Point tonight at 7:30. I believe I'll be on the Wheels of Steel, and Max Wallace will be the host. Before we get to, I forgot to mention we're going to have East Forsyth head coach Todd Willert joining us here in just a bit. Give us a little bit of a preview. His Eagles defeating the Heritage Huskies this past Friday. Me and Rod Funderburk on the call over there. We'll be back this Friday. The WTOB high school football game of the week in Forsyth County is East Forsyth hosting Jack Britt coming up from Fayetteville. That's a 7:00 kickoff on Friday. You can hear that there, and you can hear it on Tobacco Road Sports Radio online streams. You can hear all that stuff there. Let's get into your three biggest games real quick before we bring on Coach Willert, and we'll get a little bit more into the NIL talk. Three big games for the week coming to this upcoming Friday.
Well, number one, let's go ahead and go with Grimsley and Rolesville.
Yes, sir. Rolesville probably had the most eye-opening score of the opening Friday, beating Butler by like 50-something points.
Two scores popped out at me Friday. That one was one because Butler's not a slouch. They got to the out of the playoffs last year, and they have a really good quarterback that's recruited by. He's getting a lot of offers, D1 offers. He started to get them last year. So that one jumped out at me, and the other one that really jumped out at me was Mooresville.
Oh yeah, what happened there? Like,
I mean, I look up and the first score I saw was, I think, 44-0.
Yeah. We were looking at it in the booth because I was calling out scores at halftime. It's like, what in the world is going on in Mooresville? But
to Josh McGee, the coach at Reagan, Sunday night, and just kind of chit-chatting, and I said, that was the score that I think surprised me the most. And he said the defense for Mooresville is legit, might be the best we see all year. So
wow.
They've already been studying the film on them to see if they can figure out. Reagan had a big win last week too. Marvin Ridge was a good team, a playoff team last year. I think we're 6-5 or 7-4, and they play in a really tough conference down there. So down there in Charlotte. So I think that's going to be an interesting game this week with Reagan and Mooresville. But
and we'll have that matchup. It's the WCOG Guilford County game of the week. That'll also be on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. That's Chase Williams, and if I'm not mistaken, Corey Hodges will be on the call there out at Rolesville, and we'll be the only outlet in the area that'll have that game streaming. So Grimsley, Rolesville, Tuesday. Well, I've said I'm online too much, Mark. I talk a lot of smack for the teams that I represent, and I've been seeing a lot of folks from Rolesville getting real excited about their program, and I'm like, all right, the past 3 years, all I've heard is Rolesville until about week 3, and then some team from 336 comes by and just slaps a 50 burger on them, and then you don't hear anything about Rolesville for the rest of the year. But
stirring the pot, Desmond.
We'll see. I'm just saying, we'll see. They'll open up. We'll see. Give me your game 2, Mark.
I'm going to be in Clemens Friday night for Oak Grove at West Forsyth.
Okay.
Two very good teams, both got big wins. West got a huge win, I thought, against AC Reynolds last week.
Yeah, on the road. Yeah.
And weren't exactly at full strength, I learned yesterday. They were missing one of their starting offensive linemen who will be back this week. But there's the debut of Riley Horton, West's new quarterback, who transferred from Parkland, accounted for about 250 yards of total offense and 2 touchdowns. So I'll be there for that. Oak Grove got a big shutout win over Southwest Guilford last week.
Yeah.
Coach Creason out there, I think, has found a new quarterback. He had a pretty good night. Grayson Treadway, 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. Carson Williams, their running back, had a few, I think 105 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, all in the first half. Got to like it when your team wins by shutout that first week. Last year's game was back and forth the whole way. West ended up taking a 3-point lead in the fourth quarter and got a blocked field goal with I don't want to say it was like 3-4 minutes left to go in the game. Sean Davis blocked the field goal for West to kind of keep that lead intact. And I think 1 or 2 plays later, Cayman Chaplin took one to the house from long distance, and West ended up winning the game by 10. So it was a great game last season. I anticipate it's probably going to be the same this year. And I'm looking forward to being there for that one Friday night.
And give me your number 3 out of Marc's big 3 high school football games in the Triad.
So many great storylines to follow this week, and this one really caught my eye. I think it's fun. Glenn going to Ragsdale. First career win as a head coach last week for Glenn. He was an assistant coach for Antoine Stevenson for 8 or 9 years at Glenn before Antoine left this summer to take the job ultimately at Ragsdale. So it'll be, I don't know what we call it, the Stevenson Bowl, but I think Ragsdale won last week too. I can't remember.
I believe they did, yeah.
So I just think I think that'll be a neat dynamic to have Coach Green going to play at Ragsdale, playing against his teacher, quote unquote teacher, and Antoine coaching against all those kids that he had pretty much developed for the last 2 or 3 years.
So Grimsley, Rolesville, Glen Ragsdale, and West Forsyth, Oak Grove. That ain't a bad tally there. And we do have the Grimsley Rolesville game on WCOG. On the other side, on WTOB, will be the East Forsyth Fighting Eagles 1-0 to start the season after a 44-0 win over Heritage, a shutout win, taking on Jack Britt, coming up here from Fayetteville, other side of Fort Bragg. And joining us right now is the head coach of the East Forsyth Fighting Eagles, two-time state champion, Todd Willert, in the house. What's going on, Coach? How you doing, man?
Man, just happy to be along with two great guys like you, man.
We appreciate the time. I know it's in the middle of the school day, and I asked literally at 10 in the morning, like, hey, what you doing at 12:45? And you were able to carve out a little time for us, so we definitely appreciate that. Give us your thoughts on your squad. I know we did the Nest last night, and that'll be available on our podcast network here shortly. But give us your thoughts on your team's shutout win against Heritage Friday, and then looking forward here for this Jack Britt team that's going to be coming into K Vegas on Friday night.
Yeah, we did a lot of good things. We got a lot of things to still work on to get to where we want to be, come November. But good way to start. You get a win. It's, what do you say? It was 44-0, I think.
Yeah. But
we have to learn. We have way too many penalties. That's on me. A lot of 15-yarders, so we'll clean that up. We've been working hard on that this week.
I was going to actually, before you go further, Rod said it last night. I didn't mind. It might have been Cannon, Rottweiler. I think he got one. And I was like, you know what? I don't really mind the running back getting unnecessarily rough. That's okay. He's like the smallest guy out there. He's out there tossing linemen around or whatever. I'm like, hey, I like the feistiness. And he had a really good game. Really, the whole running back core had a really good games Friday night. The kid you guys brought up, Tayshawn Craigman, yeah. I really liked him. He was really jumping off the page for me. And then we've been hearing about Cannon for the past 2+ years, and he came up as a 8-quarter guy last year for a little bit. So we knew of him, but this was the first time he really was there. He was the starting running back. Like, he was out there getting those carries, and I like his style. He reminds me, I think I told Marc about this. He reminds me of Will Shipley a little bit, the way that he runs. It's like upright. He's really quick. He juked some kid out of his shoes. One of the runs he had, like the video, the game event, whoever it was, shot. You could see it from the back where the kid just loses his ACL. It's just crazy. It just completely jukes this guy. It was a great win. I thought the defense did really well. They got into a rhythm early. And honestly, man, the meat you guys have on your D-line, they couldn't run the ball. Like, they tried, but it was like running into a brick wall, like, all night long. Talk to me about those D tackles you got. We talked about at the end of the night last night, but I know you guys are super geeked about the defensive line you guys have this year.
Yeah, we're big there, man. Going back to the running backs, both those guys were our JV running backs. They've been in our program, so it's great to see those guys come up, Craigman and Rottweiler. And then obviously Jalen Murray's just a dude, man. So we got a great running back core here, but it starts with our offensive line. We have a great offensive line. They're huge. But I think we're used to kind of having big offensive lines, but we've never had a defensive line this big. I mean, we got two guys, probably both legit over 350, and they move.
I take that bet. Yeah,
they both move well. It's not a 350 that doesn't move. We tell our guy, you're not there just to take up 2 blocks or plug a hole. You're there to make plays. And a lot of times big guys aren't told that. And I think they enjoy that. And, to win in 4A football, you have to have a great defensive line. And I think we have a chance to have one of those.
Marc, you got something for Coach Willert?
I do. And I was going to ask about the defense as well with the shutout win. But I think my biggest question was, y'all had sort of an unusual circumstance last week, beginning of the week. And I wondered how you kind of overcame that mentally. Because that's got to do some kind of mental damage to the team when you have a kid that's with you and then isn't very suddenly. So
no, you'd actually be surprised. Our mentality here at East, it's not a lot of people can't handle. We're not a one-pony show here at East Forsyth. We never have been. We have probably one of the best quarterbacks in the state, in the nation, and he understands it's more than throwing the football. We run the ball, and that's just the way you got to be successful at 4A football. It can't just be a one-guy show, because if one guy gets banged up, you're in trouble. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just. our guys just move on, man. Our coaching staff, everybody, it is what it is. And honestly, we came out firing, and I was proud of everything that how our guys came out. We came out with the chip on our shoulder. I mean, I know Des, I can handle one 15-yarder, but when you end up having 5 15-yard penalties,
that was a little excessive. Yeah, that was a little too much.
Face mat blocking the back, but still, I can maybe handle one, but you start playing good teams, those 15-yarders can hurt you. And we're blessed to have a great refereeing crew, and they understood, the emotions of the first week game. Because honestly, there probably could have been some guys on both sides that could have been ejected for what they were doing. Maybe, I mean, you're not supposed to, I don't even know the rules anymore. You're not supposed to jump the ball anymore. You're not supposed to jump. I just remember back in the olden days, they were able to kick you out for that. Maybe that rule has changed. Because I remember a kid at Parkland went and dunked the ball, which was one of the greatest high school things I've ever seen. He caught a ball and scored, touchdown, dunked the ball over the goalpost, and they kicked him out right there.
I remember that for some reason. I remember that. Yeah, that was crazy.
Apparently they've gotten a little lax on that rule, thank God, because, obviously we had a kid get up and spin the ball and do a little dance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they see on TV these days. So I was grateful to the refs that they didn't, give them the 15-yarder. Don't kick a kid out for being happy. But we're going to be better at that, and we're excited about playing the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the like you said Tuesday. That'll correct itself. Like with the East Forsyth program, that's really not what we do. They're just not that kind of program in terms of like trash talk and that kind of stuff. You guys kind of really just let your play determine everything. I was talking to Rod, and I was like, I didn't realize it till I saw a tweet about it, that Bryce actually threw for almost 300 yards in that game. It didn't feel like it. It was a lot of, he had some screen passes that went really well. I think he had a long one to JP Gilchrist, and at the end of the game, I was actually in the booth like, I didn't think Bryce had that great of a game. And then I went back and looked at the stats like, wow, he really did. And like, I think that's what he brings to the team. It's like a certain calmness where even if we think he's having a bad game, from the outside watching it, he's still having a great game. And like, to me, that's the test of like a Saturday player. Like he's going to be a really good Saturday player and have the opportunity to do more if he keeps working on his craft. And he was a guest on the show last night, and we'll have that on the podcast network a little bit later on here. Head coach Todd Willert from the East Forsyth Eagles are taking on Jack Britt on the WTOB Forsyth County Game of the Week here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and the East Forsyth Sports Network. For those that asked, we actually, NFHS did something, they upgraded the cameras or something in the offseason, and we found out live, this is usually how it happens with technology, we found out live that they did something with the audio on all of these, because Joe McCormick over at Glenn was messaging me as well that their audio wasn't going through from us to the video thing. So we'll try to get that figured out, because it wasn't happening at East either, and it was hooked up the same way. So knowing NFHS, they probably took the option out just to be petty. It's like, nah, you can't do this anymore. But we'll figure it out and try to see if we can get it on the NFHS feed. Give me a player, coach, that surprised you Friday. Somebody that really stood out that maybe you weren't expecting them to.
I was really happy with our kicker, Creason Moore. The kicking game a lot of times is very overlooked in high school football, and our tradition at East Forsyth is really hard. I mean, you better be a good kicker at East. There's a big tradition. I was just really happy. He's waited his turn. He had to wait behind Wisnett last year, and for him to stay with the program, he played both soccer and football. This year, he knew he was going to be the guy, so he's just dedicated himself to football. So just proud of what he did. And I know that's we got so many dudes. You talk about Bryce and Craigman and our running backs and our defensive guys, but just proud of what Creason Moore did.
How much of a weapon is that, Coach? You've got a guy that can get it in the end zone about every time he kicks it, and teams are starting from the 20 on every possession against your defense too.
And that's a great point, Mark. That's why I don't like 15-yard celebrations on kick or on touchdowns, because now you kick from the 25 and you take that weapon away, and now, Mark, the field position game is thrown right out the window. It's very hard for a high school offense to consistently go 80 yards without making a mistake, and it is a huge weapon to have. When we had Andrew Conrad. I mean, the other huge thing was it we never had to practice this when Andrew was here as junior. We didn't have to practice kickoff. You know, you save 5 to 8 minutes a day on practicing that to add somewhere else. So the kicking game's so important when you can do things like that.
Andrew was trying to kick it through the goalposts on kickoffs like every time, and was doing it a lot too by the time he got to senior year. And he had one of the biggest legs I'd seen at this level. It comes in handy because, like you said, Coach, there's a lot of teams that can't kick at all, and it really affects their offense. Like, you know, their situational football. I see plenty of times kids are like on the 35-yard line, and it's fourth and whatever, and they're forced to go for it because they don't have a kicker. You know, like that kind of thing. So it is super important. Got some breaking news before we get out of here. NFL related, something we were talking about a little bit earlier on Believe in Panthers. KJ Henry, the defensive end who got cut by the Washington Commanders, who many people in this area would know was a star player at West Forsyth, was a top 5 overall high school prospect, has been picked up by Cincinnati. The Bengals have picked him up. The Carolina Panthers have picked up 6 players off the waiver line, including 3 defensive backs. We were just talking about how they didn't have anybody in their secondary really. They needed some bodies. They picked up Shemar Bartholomew from the Jets, Tariq Castro Fields from Washington, Keenan Isaac from Tampa Bay. They picked up a tackle from San Francisco, Jarrett Kingston, John Radigan from Seattle, a linebacker, and Jamie Sheriff from Seattle, DE. So Dan Morgan and Dave Canales using their Seattle connections to pick up some people on the waiver wire. Of course, Carolina was picking first because they had the worst record in the league last year at 2-15. So they were able to go on the food line first and kind of pick out whatever they wanted. So shout out to KJ Henry. Latching on with Cincinnati. I don't know why Washington cut him in the first place, but whatever. So
crazy business at that level.
Yes, very crazy. So happy for him. He's getting another shot and maybe a better situation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's probably a better situation.
I talked to him at his camp at West earlier in June.
Yeah, he was just here.
He established a pretty good relationship with Dan Quinn, and he was pretty optimistic that he was going to stick around even with the new regime coming in. But
they must really want their own.
I was real surprised when I saw that he had gotten cut yesterday.
Yeah.
So glad he's landing on his feet.
And that just came down from Albert Breer like 8 minutes ago. So that's breaking news there here on the Desmond Johnson Show. Before we get you out, Coach, any thoughts on Jack Britt as you get ready for Friday? Hosting the first 2 weeks of the season's got to feel good. And then we're all packing up and going up the mountain AC Reynolds next week for a tilt against the Rockets.
Always great to be at the Nest, no doubt about it. It's a different place to play at. They got a lot more athletes this year. You know, I was talking about it last night on the show, and that's one thing. They got about 3 or 4 weapons on offense that they didn't have last year. They had like 1 or 2 guys. So that will make it tougher. Defensively, they got a big offense or a defense line, but hopefully our O-line's better, a week better. So I think we match up good size-wise. And, if we do what we do, we should be okay.
Marc, you got anything before we get out?
No, sir. Thank you, Coach Willert, for joining us today.
Absolutely. That's a good place to stop it, too. So we'll end it there. That's Wednesday night. Lights high school football preview here on the Desmond Johnson Show. You can get it every Wednesday. Me and Marc Pruitt chopping up the biggest games in the high school football season and whatever breaking news happens during your lunch break. For East Forsyth head coach Todd Willert, for Marc Pruitt, this is Desmond Johnson. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.